I first want to thank the ALS Association of Indiana for sponsoring and hosting this event. I want to thank all the physicians in attendance today, as well as the medical community for joining us, and also all the advocates and their families for logging in to listen to this presentation and Dr. Babu's presentation. I've been an ALS expert since 2015. These are the ways you can get a hold of me if you have questions after the presentation. Today, I'm just one of over 500 users battling ALS. So this is just my story, but I hope today that everything I'm able to go over, somebody can walk away with some information that resonates with them. I'm going to go over my battle, some advocacy efforts, and end with some action that we can take away. So the battles that I face have been a lot more than just physical. With physical, you have cramping, it's hard to walk, hard to stand, sitting is hard, your body temperature doesn't regulate like it should, patients struggle with eating, drinking, writing, breathing, neuropathy pain, your arm and neck strength is gone. But for patients, it's a lot more than just that physical component. For us, it's, first trying to just be seen by a neurologist, get insurance to cover the numerous tests to exclude all the other illnesses other than ALS. Then we have a lag to get a diagnosis. Then we have to fight to get into a trial, get some DNA testing. For me, home modification was a very hard battle to do because it's very expensive to modify your home. We're battling to get right to try or expanded access. Some other restrictions are just driving restrictions, getting an accessible wheelchair, accessible vehicle, getting the wheelchair. For me, my first wheelchair took 8 months to get, and that was just unheard of to me. The Indiana legislative bills are another battle that I've been facing, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. So some other battles I faced was, falling or being stranded in a vehicle at work because I fell and hit my head on the van floor. By the way, those van floors are very hard. So some other battles that aren't physical was it took me almost a year to get a comfortable cushion just for my wheelchair. Trying to get the FDA to release their clinical trial guidance. And one thing I never thought of was getting audited by the IRS. We have all these medical bills and the IRS likes to dip their head in there and see what we're doing. Here in Indiana, battle just to get vocational rehab to do their job, getting a wheelchair lift, double billings from physician's office. My mom passed away from colon cancer, so I still do my colonoscopies, and man, having ALS and prepping for a colonoscopy is not fun. There's other things like filing disability, paying for your mortgage still, trying to get respite care so your family members could have some type of, just a little break. You have loss of income from our spouse. And when I began my advocacy efforts, I was even blocked by a national ALS organization. So I would go to say that having ALS is very cumbersome to patients. But the one battle that really lit my fire was this last one. And I didn't think that we would be battling the AAN, the American Academy of Neurology. So I know there's some AAN members together, but back in early 2018, the FDA released a draft version of their clinical trial guidance, and they asked for comments. And I don't think everybody read through all those comments, but I did. And the one that caught my eye was one that came from our very own AAN. And in this letter, instead of providing comments for draft clinical trial guidance, they went on a tangent about treating patients. And it all came to this climax here that said the AAN recognizes that intrathecal therapies may be appropriate for new and innovative treatments. However, this delivery mechanism is cumbersome in neurology and presents challenges for physicians and other providers administering. So as a patient for me, my first thought was, really, do neurologists know what cumbersome means? I mean, when you compare that to ALS, we just want treatments. We want a fighting chance, and we want the professionals provide good comments and making clinical trials better. But instead, they throw these roadblocks in here that had nothing to do with clinical trial guidance. That really set me on the advocacy efforts. So some of my efforts started here in Indiana. I was very vocal about trying to get Indiana to the Death with Dignity law. It did not pass, but it doesn't mean we didn't try. I've also worked on an ALS specialty license plate, and we should know in October if it's been approved by the state. We had an Ales for ALS with Sun King Brewery, helped provide many foursomes for the local golf outing, and the most recent effort here in Indiana is medical cannabis. Nationally, I worked on a petition that got 20,000 signatures, and Brian Wallach from I Am ALS handed over these 20,000 signatures to the FDA to help them be held accountable for producing that clinical trial guidance. Within I think it was 40 days of handing those over, the trial guidance was finally produced. But that took over a decade for the FDA to step up and to finally publish those guidance documents. I help a lot of our our national ALS patients with some of these social media campaigns to raise awareness of ALS. One was the ALS draft, which got a lot of followers to I Am ALS. We did our ALS plea in hopes to have some ending to the stalemate between a drug sponsor and the FDA, as well as the ice cream for ALS. This was to raise attention to the lack of treatments for patients and how ice cream can be more beneficial to patients than anything we have. I've talked to many of our state representatives to join the ALS caucus, and even talked to Senator Braun, who started the Senate side of the ALS caucus. I was a consultant for what is known as the Promising Pathway Act. This act will help get critical treatments to patients sooner and without jeopardizing safety and efficacy. There's another bill out there called Act for ALS, which helps provide federal funding for expanded access programs for ALS patients. Every one of you should go to iamals.org/action. There you could sign letters and contact your Congress people to support these two bills, and as well as to sign another letter to Congress. So please visit that after this meeting. I've worked with a couple of pharmas trying to establish an expanded access program. Even though I can't say who they are, there are pharma companies that are interested in providing broad expanded access today. Another one of these advocacy efforts we need to really focus on is accountability for the ALS CDC registry. The numbers they produce are not very adequate for what we have out there. And being in the data world for healthcare consulting, I know they can do better, and they have $108 million, and it's an utter failure in my opinion. This next one was a little girl who was 8 years old from Michigan. She has ALS, and she ended up getting a feeding tube. So she went home, went to the hospital, got her feeding tube, went home, and insurance denied her the supplies needed to survive. So I reached out to the ALS community on Twitter and Facebook, and we got quite a large uproar over this little girl needing these supplies. And within 24 hours, of me reaching out to the community and it's causing this uproar, the insurance companies sent 3 large boxes of supplies to this 8-year-old girl in Michigan so that she could get the nutrition she needs as she battles ALS. The battles we face as patients are just insurmountable. And we've got to really take a step back and say, what's the right thing to do? Part of these things that I work on need graphics and to help put some more power into the patient's hands. So I also created graphics here and there to help patients tweet or to attach to their emails when they are trying to contact their Congress people to support our bills. The one effort, since this is the Indiana update, I really want us to focus on is medical cannabis here in Indiana. Over 80% of Hoosiers support it. It's legal in 33 states, 4 territories. And these laws that have been on the books for a cumulative of hundreds of years already have never been rescinded due to safety. We're surrounded here in Indiana by medical cannabis. In Indiana, we have a law called Right to Try, and it's supposed to provide access to terminal patients that have no meaningful treatments. But medical cannabis is still treated as criminal here in Indiana. And these benefits, it produces neural oxidation, dysautonomia, helps with pain, spasticity, the side effect of drooling, less drooling, muscle wasting, dyspnea, and depression. If you were to create a drug to treat ALS, the effects of ALS, medical cannabis would be it. And it's really cruel not to support that. But in 2016, there was an article from the Journal of Neuroregeneration Research, and it stated that there's a valid rationale to propose the use of cannabinoid compounds in the pharmacological management of ALS patients. Cannabinoids indeed are able to delay ALS progression and prolong survival. The mouse model used for that equated to 3 years of extended human life, which is 12 times better than what we've had on the market. At this point, it is cruel and harmful to not publicly support and advocate for Hoosiers to have access to this. So one reason why I really think we should have access to this is because if we look at Indiana, we don't have access to hardly any clinical trials right now. The platform trial that Dr. Babu is going to talk about is at over 50 sites, but Indiana is excluded. And it's not because we have a lot of clinical trials going on. The one thing we really need to evaluate is, what does this tell our patients in Indiana about research and hope? And to me as a patient, it tells me, hey, we're not going to put forth the effort to get clinical trials. We want you to take your riddled bodies, and we want you to go far away from Indiana to have access to clinical trials. And I really don't think that is the thought in Indiana, but it's really the experience and the visualization that it's producing. So I really want to change this so that patients in Indiana can access clinical trials without traveling hours by car or hours by plane. And this is me, right? There's nothing here for me to access. I can't access medical cannabis. I can't access clinical trials. So I'm on my own. There was a research that showed infrared light helps repair mitochondria in ALS patients. So I'm just one of over 500 Hoosier experts here in the state of Indiana. The things we really want is we want the physician staff to be transparent, but we want to fight and we want to try experimental therapies. So please don't use this as only a source of revenue. Let's get clinical trials here in Indiana. Let's support and advocate for Hoosiers battling ALS. Make those public statements. Physicians, come out and support for medical cannabis. ALS Association, come out and support it. It's not like it's going to hurt us, right? There's nothing cumbersome when you're comparing an ALS patient, what we have to go through. Also, when you're dealing with your patients, be on the ALS clock. Everything we do has a very short and expedited time frame, and there's nothing more discouraging than healthy people telling you to hold and wait, or wait another month, or wait another 6 months for a supply to come in, because we're on a very fast clock. Patients don't like the barriers just like you don't, but we want to help you remove them. If it's raising money to get a clinical trial here, tell us that. We will help you raise the money to get a clinical trial here. If it's raising money for expanded access, we can help. We want to help. Just reach out and ask. But the last thing is what Dr. David Kessler said. He was the FDA commissioner in 1992. And this still rings true today, but not for AIDS, but for ALS. It says the riskiest thing we can do for AIDS is the failure to take a risk. And that is totally my thought. Taking no risk for ALS is the riskiest thing we could do. With that, I just want to say, if you have questions, please wait and give those at the end, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. But if you have any comments, you can send them to me as well.